Hello weaving friends, today we are reviewing the Lojan Flex Loom. Now this is the upgraded loom. So I started out with the Flex rigid heddle, the 50 centimeter rigid heddle loom, and I bought the conversion kit to upgrade it to 4 shafts. You can also buy a kit to upgrade to 8 shafts. Already on this channel I have a video that shows you how to assemble the kit when you purchase it and get it all organized on the rigid heddle loom. I've also got an assembly video for the rigid heddle loom, plus a review video for the rigid heddle loom. And so you might want to check those out to get yourself a little bit more familiar with this loom and what it's about. Now, I do just want to point out that when I do a review of any piece of equipment, whatever it is, it's just my opinion and my thoughts from using the equipment. And oftentimes it comes down to personal preference. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this loom and let's just jump right in. I'm going to actually start from the floor and work my way up because why not? I have mine on a stand. Now the stand is a separate purchase, but I find the stand is just excellent. And I'll show you why in a moment when I'm actually seated at the loom. But I wanted to point out something else that I do to get really comfortable with this kind of stand, because this stand is designed as a fold out stand and a fold back stand. So you can fold it up and transport it easily or put it away, whatever you want to do with it. But the fold out stands do have like a bar at the front and a bar at the back, and that's how they keep their stability. This creates a bit of a problem for people like me who like to weave from an office chair on wheels. If you had like a normal chair with legs, well, you could just pop the 2 front legs over this bar and then you could get in nice and close. The problem with the wheels is, as you can see, I can only get so close to the loom. So if I sit down now, and I try to come in closer, I can't actually come in any closer than this. And that creates issues for me with my back because I cannot be leaning while I'm weaving. I need to be as snug and close to the loom as possible, or I'm going to get like that repetitive strain, pain and injury and terrible stuff. So what I do with my chair, so that I can keep using my comfy chair that I love to weave with, I use this chair with any rigid heddle or table loom, is I just pick up the front, I put one of the legs, and so one of the wheels, over that bar. Then I can swivel the chair around, and although it's a little bit of a tight fit, I can then get in much closer. And then once one of those legs is over that bar, I can actually move in a little closer still, and I can usually manipulate the loom so that I can actually sit right against the loom, which is really comfortable for me. By the way, with the stand, it's really easy to take the loom on and off the stand. There are just some wing nuts on the inside of the loom on either side at the front and the back, and that's how you take it on and off. So if you want to take it off for warping, you can either warp it on or off the stand, it's up to you. I prefer to warp it off the stand because that puts it at that puts the loom at a higher height because my table is higher than the stand. It's better for my back. You can also direct warp, or you can use a rattle. If you're interested in direct warping, I do have a demonstration of that in the Kindred Weavers members section of this channel. So we're going to have a look. First of all, I'll talk a little bit more after what I'm actually weaving here afterwards. But I'm just going to bring the beater forward so that we can have a look at the shafts. So any table loom, generally, unless it is connected up to some treadles, which is a conversion that you can do on some table looms, not this one. This one is operated by the levers. So I have 4 levers here because, as I said, I upgraded to the 4 shafts. So if I had upgraded to 8, obviously these extra holes are here for the extra levers. If you watched my assembly video for this part of the loom, you will feel like these parts might feel a little bit familiar to you. So operating the shafts is as simple as just pushing down like so, and they stay put until you do anything else with them. That's done by elastic and cords. So you've got cords up the top here. They go over some little wheels and connect up to these levers at the back. And they also go along rollers at the bottom with some elastic, which keeps them kind of in balance. Just like most table looms, if you want to put extra heddles on, that is best done beforehand. So you need to make sure you have all your heddles counted out for your project, because you need to actually disassemble one end of these shafts in order to put more heddles on. So the levers are very simple to operate. They're comfortable to use. When you want to put them back down, they're ready to go down just like that. They don't make any noise, they're very quiet, and they operate pretty seamlessly. At the front and the back of the loom, this all operates just the way it does when you have it set up as a rigid heddle loom as well, which is fantastic, because if you want to switch between the table loom and the rigid heddle loom, then it makes the switching actions fairly minimal. So we've got an apron rod at the front here. They provide like a metal rod to be your apron rod, along with the textile cords that are attached to the front roller there. Then we've got a cloth beam, which is lovely. It helps to keep the tension really well. At the back here, we've got a back beam in the similar way, and the setup is pretty much the same. There's a back roller with a back apron rod, which is a metal rod. A quick look from the back of the loom shows you how these levers look from behind when you're operating the shafts. So you can see how the cords are all here and how they move to operate the shafts. One thing I really like about this loom, besides its actual sturdiness, is the simplicity of tensioning and advancing the warp. So you can remain seated to do all of this. You don't have to get up and go around to the side of the loom. So at the back here, we can just reach through, take off the metal bracket and adjust however much tension you want to let off. And then to advance, we just bring that forward and you tension it as much as you want to, or as little as you want to. How much or how little you tension it is going to come with you practicing and actually using the loom, and it might depend on your project as well. But I love how simple it is and how well the loom tensions. I wanted to show you the rattle as well. Although I'm not using the rattle at this stage, because obviously I already have my warp on, I just want to show you how simple it is to attach the rattle and what sort of positions you could possibly have it in. The rattle is available as a separate purchase. It doesn't actually come with the loom, so bear that in mind. But it's just a simple piece of equipment. So it's got these little metal bolts on either side, and there are holes corresponding on the loom. So just pop one side in there, pop the other side in the hole on the opposite side, and then tighten up those star screws. And then I have my rattle in place. You can use it in this position, or you can use it at the back of the loom if you're more accustomed to that. And it comes with this cover. It's a plastic cover that just slides off. So basically you can put your warp in, space it in the rattle, and then to stop the threads coming out while you're doing the next step of threading or whatever you're doing, actually warping, then you just slide that back on. The beater attaches at the sides, so you have a little area where the bottom of the beater rod goes into the loom to hold it, and then you have like a piece that you put in for the beater to rest against and to stop it going too far back, and that's how the beater operates, just back and forth like that. Very simple. So now that I've shown you all the basic parts of the loom, you might want to see what it looks like to actually weave on a loom like this. Now, of course, it's going to depend on what project you are weaving on. This one, I guess, is a little more complex in that I'm using 2 shuttles and I'm doing a pattern weft and a tabby weft, so a plain weave background. This is a crackle weave pattern. It's from my crackle scarf collection pattern that's available in my store. I'll link to it down below. But to give you the basic idea, let's just weave on here a little bit so you can see. So often when you're weaving, you will be using more than one shaft at a time. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm using shafts 3 and 4. So I just place them down. You might have noticed that some of the cords are a different color. So on 3 and 4, I've got a green cord. On 1 and 2, I've got like a beige cord. And that's just to help you, like when you're setting it up and everything. And just as a visual reminder to which levers are which. So that's my pattern weft that I'm putting through at the moment, the gold. You can either beat on an open or closed shed. I usually prefer to beat on a closed shed, and you bring the beater forward and press, and that is your beat. Now, I'm doing tabby in between, so I'm using 2 shafts for that. And every pattern pick that I do is followed by a tabby. There's a bit of repetition in this pattern as far as the pattern weft goes because I'm building up blocks of colour. So I'm doing shafts 3 and 4 again. And I actually do that 6 times, but I alternate the tabby that I do in between them. Some people might be wondering, you know, is it necessary that I fiddle with the wefts at the edges before I beat? And for some projects, it's not necessary when you're using a boat shuttle, but for others, I do find that it is. Now, especially if I'm using 2 different wefts, and also one of the wefts is doubled. So you can see there I've got a bit of differential in the amount of tension that they have let off at. And so I need to retension that myself and then place it against the edge where I want it. And also sometimes when you're using 2 wefts, like a tabby and a pattern as I am here, sometimes you can get them kind of intermingling at the edges in a way that isn't so great. And so I place them by hand, and that ensures that I have the neat edges. And I don't mind doing that. I don't mind taking the extra time to do that. Generally, if I'm just working with 1 shuttle and it's a fairly simple pattern, then I'll just be shooting the shuttle across and tensioning it that way. So I won't need to mess around with the edges so much. So the answer is, it depends. All right, how many have I done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 more of my pattern weft. Using one of my beautiful Pickers Ridge handmade shuttles here. These are made in Australia, in Queensland, by sustainable wood that they source within Australia, and they are very skillfully made. I'll leave you a link to them down below too. So what I'm going to do is just continue weaving a little bit more. That way you can get a really good demonstration of how the loom works. Plus you might be able to, you might formulate some questions as you watch me that I haven't covered, and so you can ask them in the comments. And then after the demonstration, at the end, I'm going to tell you what I love about this loom and what I don't love about the loom. So stay tuned for that. If you're interested to know more about crackle weave in general and to learn more about this project that I'm working on at the moment, I have a video over in the members only section for the Kindred Weavers. It's only $5 a month to join, and you get access to videos before the free channel does. You get members only videos, you get priority commenting responses, and you get a nice little community of people. It's basically a little space on YouTube for those of you who love my YouTube channel and would like a little bit more and would also like another way to support me. So I'll leave the link to that down below if you're interested in having a look and joining up. All right, things I love about the loom. Well, I really love the sturdiness. That was something that I noticed right away when I got the Flex as a rigid heddle loom, that it was just super sturdy and strong and well built. And that of course continues with adding on the conversion kit. Actually setting up the conversion to use it as a table loom, it does take a little while because of the assembly and everything. But once you've got everything assembled, if you want to take it back to a rigid heddle loom again, it's much easier because you can keep this whole castle part all assembled. It's not like you're putting everything, like undoing everything and then putting it back together again. You're just taking off this castle part, you're putting on your rigid heddle supports for the reed for the heddle, and then away you go again. So it is actually a quick and easy conversion, and that way you get to have two looms in one. Sometimes you can use it as a rigid heddle, sometimes you can use it as a table loom, depending on what you want to do. Despite it being so sturdy, it's not overly heavy, and I like that aspect as well because I can move it about my studio, which I frequently do. I can pack it up and take it with me if I want to take it somewhere, if I wanted to take it to a class or a demonstration. As I said, the stand is foldable. That's a very simple thing to collapse and take in the car. And then also this castle part is also collapsible. Very simple, some knobs at the side here. I demonstrate that in the assembly video as well. And you can just loosen the knobs and basically collapse that down whether you have a warp on or not. So that's a huge bonus as well, because then you are transporting something that is much flatter than if the castle is up. I like how compact this whole loom is on its stand. I think it would be a really fantastic option for someone with a limited space because it really doesn't take up very much room. I already pointed out that I really like the tensioning on this loom. There's a little bit of a trade-off with the tensioning though, that has been my experience at least. The higher your tension goes, the stiffer the levers are to operate. So I guess there's kind of a sweet spot with the tension, but I do find that if I tension it up really nice and tight, as I like to do, then I will struggle a little bit more with the levers. It's still doable, but just a little bit stiffer and a little bit more reluctant. Thankfully, as I also pointed out, it's so easy to retension it just by playing around with, you know, just one click at a time or two clicks at a time to find that sweet spot. And that just makes it easy to find strike the right balance. I really like the front cloth beam. I feel that that improves the tension, and the back beam as well. Having the cloth feed over a beam and having the warp feed over a beam at the back and then onto the roller is really good for tension. And I like the way the cloth beam and the back beam are positioned as well. I like the height that they are and how the weaving is like right in front of you and it's flat. It's not sloped or angled. When I was setting up the loom, I did have to fiddle around with the shafts a bit. I had to sort of screw and unscrew to get the different levels for the shafts because you want to try and hang them at a very similar level. But I did find that once I had that done, it's been really good. I haven't had to fiddle with them at all. And if I did, it's not that hard to do just by unscrewing and moving a cord. I can't comment on whether I liked the rattle experience or not because I didn't actually use my rattle. I will at some point, but I particularly wanted to do my direct warp and I didn't need a rattle for that. So another time I will use the rattle and see how that goes, but I can't give you any feedback on that at the moment. Another thing that I really like is the sheds. The sheds are nice and open. Plenty of space to get a boat shuttle through, no problems at all with that. If your shafts are all hung at the same height, if you've adjusted them to get them the same height, you won't have any problems with not having a nice clear open shed. So that brings me to the part that I'm not absolutely in love with, and that is the beater. I've actually never used a beater like this before. You know, I have a bunch of different looms. I've got a couple of floor looms and another table loom and rigid heddle looms. I haven't used a beater like this before. I like the fact that it is such a simple mechanism. What is different about it for me is actually holding onto it and beating. So when you hold it, it's quite thick at the top, the part that encases the reed. And then at the bottom, it's just the bottom of the reed. There's actually nothing to fully encase it. And I think this is the main difference. All of my other looms are fully encased in a frame. So they have a top frame and a bottom frame. And then they're usually supported, the sides of the frame are usually supported by the arms. So this one is quite different because the arms are just going into the top of the beater, which is quite thick. And the beater is it's a bit wobbly. And I'm really not used to that. I'm used to a beater that is straight and I guess quite rigid in the way that it moves. So on my David loom, I've got a gliding beater. So it basically goes back and forth on rails. And so it's extremely steady. And as I said, it's encased in a frame. On my large floor loom, I have an overhanging beater and it's very big and very heavy and fully encased, and so it's very easy to just pull it back and forth, and it goes back itself. So I pull it forward, it goes back by itself. And then on my other table loom, again, I have a sort of overhung beater where the arms come up the sides and it's encased in a frame. So this is quite a different thing and it's taken a lot of getting used to, and I still don't love it. I've tried quite a few different ways of using the beater. And the positioning that I have come to use pretty much is just holding it from the top like this and pulling forward and then using it to kind of beat, like pushing from the back a little bit, I guess. And I find it does beat the weft into place, but not in the way that I'm accustomed to. I'm accustomed to a firm straight beat, and so that is really different. And I'm still getting used to that. Someone actually asked me the question already because they watched the assembly video. They're wondering about the sturdiness and longevity of the plastic parts, because there are a number of plastic parts on this loom, on the shafts, on the rollers at the sides, and on to hold the levers. They were asking in particular about the parts that hold the levers, whether I thought that they would be likely to break over time, and whether they would be very replaceable. Well, as for the replaceability of parts, I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue to get replacement parts if you did have breakages. But I feel that the plastic parts are very sturdy. It's a very strong plastic. I personally am not worried when I'm using this loom that I'm stressing the plastic parts or that they are likely to break. I don't think. Of course, you've got to use reasonable care with these kind of things. So for example, I'm sitting by a window with this loom today because it lets in a lot of natural light for my video. But I'm not going to store this loom by the window with sunlight coming in, as you know, with any plastic, and even with wood. If you have direct sunlight on it, then that's going to be more wear and tear than if you don't have that. Another thing is, as I already mentioned, the higher you tension, the more the levers will struggle. And so you've got to kind of, you know, counteract that and watch what you're doing there. So if you tensioned it a huge amount, like really over tensioned the yarn, really over tensioned the warp, then I guess using the levers would stress that plastic over time, but it would also stress your warp and, you know, other parts of the loom. And it's not something that you need to do to have a ridiculous level of tension. You just want to go for the amount of tension that you need for the project. And for me, that's a firm tension. So for me, weaving at firm tension, I don't feel that these plastic parts are being stressed by that. And I think also the design of the levers, you know, that they do move so easily and cleanly and smoothly, that that's not going to be an issue. So to answer that question, no, I don't think it is likely that the plastic would break if you take the proper care. So let's just go over for a minute purchasing options, because I know it can get a little confusing when you've got the conversion kit and everything. So basically you can purchase just the rigid heddle loom as a rigid heddle loom. You can then purchase, if you have the rigid heddle loom, you can purchase a conversion kit, and you can either purchase a conversion kit up to 4 shafts, or you can purchase a conversion kit up to 8 shafts. In addition to that, this loom is available just as a table loom. So you can actually buy, you can skip the rigid heddle part if you don't want that or you're not interested in that, and go straight to the table loom, the flex table loom. And again, you can choose from 4 or 8 shafts. And you can also, in future, if you got the table loom and then decided that you did want to have a go at rigid heddle loom, at rigid heddle weaving, you can also purchase a conversion kit to do that. So these looms are built as like multi-purpose, grow with you kind of loom, or, you know, to give you heaps of options. But it's super clever because you can do a bunch of different things with them, or you can just leave it as is when you bought it. When you buy the conversion kit or you buy the table loom, you get a 10 dent reed, that's the standard with it, and you get all the other basics that you would expect to get with a loom like that. And same with the rigid heddle loom, you get your rigid heddle with 7.5 dent heddle sections. Now, as I already pointed out, the rattle and the stand are optional extras. Having woven on this loom as a rigid heddle loom without the stand, because I didn't have the stand initially, I would recommend the stand, but I always recommend a stand if you can. I just think that it makes for so much more comfortable weaving. So when I'm not weaving with a stand, I will have the loom sitting against a table, and then I'll have myself pushed up against that. But I don't find that anywhere near as comfortable as having a stand, being able to get my chair right in, adjust the height of my chair to the height of the stand, all of that good stuff, to be really super comfortable. The way that I think about making investments like going to the extra expense of getting a stand is that it's about my longevity as a weaver as well. It's going to make me more comfortable over time. I'm going to have less back pain, less shoulder pain, less neck pain. All of these things that will happen to me if I don't weave ergonomically. And so by making the investment in the stand, I'm making an investment in myself as a weaver. That's how I look at it. As I said, I didn't have the stand right away. I waited for a little while and then decided that I would purchase the stand. And it's been a very worthwhile investment. Okay, so what have I forgotten to cover? I'm sure there must be a bunch of stuff that I haven't covered. So go ahead and ask me in the comments down below and I will get back to you about it. I'll remind you also that I am a reseller for Lojan in Australia. And so if you want to inquire about this loom or any of the other Lojan products, they have spinning wheels as well as looms, shoot me an email and I can help you out with some pricing and some more details. So to wind up this video today, overall, I'm very satisfied with this loom. I enjoy weaving on it. And I do recommend it as a table loom or as a rigid heddle loom on a stand. And I think it would be a great investment for anyone who is interested in a good quality loom with what I would call a forward-thinking design. Okay folks, don't forget to check out all the links that I will have for you down below related to what I've been talking about today. And until next time, happy weaving.